Hi, this is Rock. We're going to look at using the switch function inside a let function. What I've got here is a list of trails, and I got this from Wikipedia. These are long hiking trails that you can do in a number of countries around the world. We've got these distances in miles and in kilometers. So what we're going to do is try to figure out what date we would finish with a given start date and the number of miles and which trails you choose. So I'm going to have start date here. Let's have whether you're using miles or kilometers as your chosen way to indicate distance. What we're going to calculate is this end date down here. When can you finish your hiking? So let's do this where we have a drop down here. I'm going to do data validation, list, and then have this just be miles, comma, kilometers. So you can choose which one to use. And then the start date, I'm going to make sure this is a date field. There we go. So let's say we're going to start on July 1st of 2027. We got those number of miles. How do we calculate this end date? I'm also going to put in a select column to see which ones we're going to select. And here I'm going to have it be that you can mark it with an X if you're going to hike that one. One other metric we'll need is how fast you walk. So let's say hiking speed. And the hiking speed will be contingent on whether you've chosen miles or kilometers. So we're going to say if this equals miles, then we're going to say miles per hour. Otherwise, we're going to say kilometers per hour. So what you put in here is the kilometers per hour or miles per hour based on what you've chosen here. All right, and then here's your start date. Here's the end date. I'm going to have this format replicated down here. What we're going to do is indicate which trail we're going to walk, how many miles per hour we walk. Let's say we have measured it and it turns out we hike at the rate of 3.5 miles per hour. So how do we calculate this? What we're going to do is do a let function because we need some data in here. First of all, we need to know which trail, right? So I'm going to define several variables. The first one will be, let's call it selected trails. And that will be, I'm going to filter this column if this column equals X. So if at the end of our let, all we did was display the selected trails, it's going to be the Trans-Canada Trail. If we had multiple trails, it would add those trails in here. But I'm going to go ahead and take those trails out and leave us just with the variable selected trails as the filter of this list of trails filtered by those that have an X in column G. All right, the next variable I want to put in is the total miles. So I'm going to say total, no, let's not call it total. Let's call it trail miles. Trail miles. And the trail miles are going to be filter this column I if this column G equals X. All right, and now if we want to check out what that looks like, we can say trail miles and hit enter, and it gives us it gives us that because we formatted it for a date. Let me change that format to a number for just a second, and it's 17,000 is showing us the sample. I'm going to cancel that. Okay, so that's working correctly. Let's do the next variable as trail kilometers. And we're going to do, again, this filter. I'm going to cheat a little bit and copy that, paste it, and instead of I will use J, changing the I to J here. And then if we check the trail kilometers, if we hit enter and then format that and go to change it to a number, it's 28,000. So trail kilometers is working as a variable. Let's have another variable called trail count. How many trails are we planning to do? In which case, I can use this same filter, but instead of J, I'm going to look at G here and here, and then I'm just going to do a count A of this. And then if we do a trail count, I can look at that, and the answer is going to give me a date again. But let's see, I think it's just a 1. If I check here, I shouldn't have formatted it as a date first, but if I go to a number, it's just 1. We only have 1, but if I put some more in here, it changes to 3. And again, that's just formatted as a date, so it's not showing it as a number 3. It's showing it as January 3rd of the year 1900. All right, now let's look at any other variable that we might need. Let's see, we need the hiking speed in here. So I'm going to take hiking speed, and the hiking speed is going to be simply that. And the start date is going to be that with an absolute reference. I'm going to make this a little bigger so we can see here. And now I'm going to pause the writing of this function because it's just occurred to me one of the things we're going to need now, and I'll change the row height to 15 here. There we go. One of the things we're going to need to know is how many hours per day we're going to be hiking. Hours per day, and in here it'll just be hours, and then let's say we do 8 hours a day. All right, so we're going to need that variable to make our calculation. So I'm going to go ahead and add that variable. I'm going to say hiking hours, I'll call that. And the hiking hours is this. Let's do our formula, and we're going to put that formula here as the last argument in our let statement. And as promised, we're going to use a switch in here. But how do you calculate this? You're going to calculate how many days it's going to take you to hike. Let's start this by taking the sum of either the trail miles or the trail kilometers. Whether you use miles or kilometers is dependent on E9. So let's do this. Let's do a switch, and we're going to take E9. I can just click on it here, switch E9 such that if E9 is miles, then we're going to get the sum of the trail miles. If it's kilometers, then we're going to get the sum of trail kilometers. So that is our switch. So we're going to take the sum of that, and then we're going to divide it by your hiking speed times your hiking hours. But what I want to know is not miles, I want to know the number of days. So with this, what we're going to need to do is take this output and add it to the start date. If I close that, hit enter, it says we would finish on February 27th of 2029, hiking the Trans-Canada Trail. Okay, so let's say what happens if we add another trail we're going to walk. If we add the Continental Divide Trail to this, then we won't finish until June. So let's do a quick check to see what we're talking about. If I take this off, let's just check to see if this February 27th is actually when that would really end. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this and have this be the start date down here. I'm going to paste the values of that and then just make sure it's a date like that. And then I'm going to put this as equals this plus 1. And then I'm going to also have this be day 1, which means this would be this plus 1. And then I'm going to have here how far I would get, which is this times 8 times how far I get, 3.5 miles. And if I do that, and then I bring this down, so I get 28 miles the first day. And the second day, I would be 56 miles. So basically what I want to do is drag this down and see what the date is at which I will reach 17,000 miles. So if I bring this all the way down, let's see how far we are. After the first year, we got 10,248 miles. And if I do this again here, the point at which we hit 17,000, we're almost there. The point at which we hit 17,000 is on February 27th of 2029, after 608 days of hiking. So this was a little check to see if this was working right. So if you were going to hike all of these, I will paste this down, and you started on July 7th of 2027, it would take you until 2034 to hike all these trails, going at 3.5 miles an hour for 8 hours a day. In kilometers, if you change this all to kilometers, the reason this date is different is that you've got this in kilometers per hour. If we change to kilometers per hour, that's going to be 5.6327 kilometers per hour. If I do that, we have it ending at 4.2 of 34, which is probably different because some of these kilometers versus miles are not exact. That would be my guess. In fact, let's do a quick check of this, because it turns out that 1 mile equals 1.60934 kilometers. So if I take this and I convert these miles to kilometers, you see how we're not exact here. If I paste that down, if I make this first an absolute reference and then I paste that down, these are more accurate kilometers if the miles are what's accurate. This would be the more accurate kilometer conversion. If I pasted this in here, then suddenly we're ending on July 3rd of 34 again, which, in other words, it really shouldn't matter whether you choose 3.5 miles per hour or the kilometers per hour that's equivalent. Either way that you put that in, that should end on July 3rd. And it does. So this is working. Happy hiking. Next, we're going to look at substitute. So nesting the substitute function within itself. See you then.